Hello, everybody. If you're listening to this right now, then you're probably among the thousands like us who have already watched most of, if not the entirety, or even just the highlights of the DC Fandome. Something that they'd been hyping up for a little while, something that I was keeping my expectations very measured myself, and we'll get into like the mindset that we were going into this with. But I think we can all agree that that was pretty rad. It's pretty hype. It surpassed my expectations, certainly. And just, I'm so excited to talk about this. There's a lot to get into here. This was literally with some slight breaks and some slight, like, non DC related interludes. Those aside, this was pretty much 7, 8 straight hours of DC content, and it was really interesting. Like, this was the whole day, and there's a lot to get into, so this is going to be a while. But yeah, I spoke a little bit about how I was going into this. How about you?
Um, well, after like they had built this up for so long, and I was like, oh, they got to deliver with how much they're promoting this thing. Like they're treating it like it's Comic Con, um, which didn't get the buzz. I mean, naturally, because it's just not the same, and for a lot of people that just hurt that event. But DC knew they were gonna have to come at this at a very different angle because of the current state of things and the kind of times we're living in. But they rose to the challenge. They showed off some great trailers, um, gave us some interesting tidbits, and all in all, it was a really nice, really interactive event. A few fans got personal shout outs, and I thought that was awesome. I could only imagine. Like I'd be geeking out if I got to personally talk to, and like he seems like a fine person. You and I feel the same about his filmography, but it's got to be cool if you're a fan of Zack Snyder to be able to talk to him live on this kind of event in front of the entire world.
Yeah, and like I've got my takes on Zack Snyder and the Snyder Cut and all this stuff. And I suppose, I don't know, what order should we do this in? Because I've got a lot to say about the Justice League teaser once we get into that. But I
I
don't
was
know
thinking
where you want to start. Should we just start with the biggest stuff first, or I don't know?
I have a copy of the schedule in front of me.
Oh, okay, so let's
Yeah.
just use that.
The first panel they did was Wonder Woman.
All right. So, I guess I'll take that one first. I am not gonna lie, I wasn't overly impressed by the new 84 footage. This is going to be the easy, obvious joke, but I think it really does hold true, which is that what we see of Cheetah has a lot of Cats vibes with a digital fur tech. Which, yes, I have actually seen that movie. It was one of the first
Oh,
things that we all watched when quarantine started. And it was like, we said we were going to watch Cats as like a sick kind of experiment, so let's do it. And Cheetah really is giving me vibes of that movie with the digital fur technology. So
Don't say we. I didn't take part in that.
I just hope that she looks better in the final product.
Malik, don't watch that movie. I'm sorry to interrupt, but don't do it.
Yeah, I can't recommend Cats.
Don't do it. I stayed out of there
unfortunately.
when he said we.
you can't even enjoy it. Let me ask you this: you can't even enjoy it as so far as it's so bad it's good type thing, or it's
I
just
had
bad.
nightmares about it, and I didn't even look. At
I
Mom.
enjoyed it as a so bad it's good thing. Our mom enjoyed it on that level.
Our mother was knocked out for 24 hours. She didn't wake up the next day.
It's kind of horrifying. I don't know. I feel like if you're going in for a so bad it's good thing, you might like it on that level.
Okay, bye.
But-
I won't interrupt the review anymore, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, just be prepared to be kind of scared.
Godspeed, my friend. Don't do it.
Wait! I gotta ask your sister. Did
wait.
she see?
She didn't see the
Because I know
Gotham Knights thing that. No, I gotta tell you the Gotham Knights trailer when we're done with this.
Okay.
She's gonna like. I know you're a big fan of the Bat Family. Your head's gonna explode.
Yes.
Yay.
But yeah, so sticking with 84, it definitely didn't have the thing that I had with the Batman trailer and with the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League trailer, where I've already gone back and like looked at those trailers a lot because I just find them fun to watch. I don't know. This one I feel really bad for like starting us out on something comparatively negative, but I feel like this one kind of dampened my hype for Wonder Woman 84. Like I feel like my excitement has gone down actually.
That's not really me at all. Like I honestly, I wasn't expecting Cheetah to look any better than Cats. Um,
Hmm.
and honestly, if the movie's good, like I could care less about that, and I can just swallow the bad effects. It's not that big a deal to me, and it's not going to take me out of the movie too hard, as long as I'm enjoying the story and the acting.
That's true.
Um,
And like just one my last point that I forgot is about the acting. I'm not on the train that some people I know are on, which is like Gal Gadot sucks as an actress. I really, or is it Gal Gadot? Because they pronounce it Gal Gadot and no one corrects it. I've been pronouncing it Gal Gadot all this time. I guess I was wrong. But yeah, I feel put off by some of her deliveries in this trailer. I don't know. I hope that doesn't hold for the whole movie. But it was kind of like conspicuous to me in a way it wasn't with the first film.
uh, I didn't have that either. I mean, this trailer didn't do like it didn't blow me away either. Um, but it definitely didn't diminish my hype in any way. I'm still very much looking forward to that movie. And yeah, I mean, the main thing that movie has to do for me is convince me that somehow just wishing Trevor back into existence was the right call. Because otherwise, it really dampens and cheapens the ending of the first movie. They got to work really hard to, like, for me to be on board with that. That's my big thing. Um, but otherwise, I like what I'm seeing from that film.
Okay. I
So
know
up
that they
next,
talked about it at length, or like to the extent that they could, because all of these trailers and stuff come with the cast and the directors coming in to discuss the movie to the extent that they can without spoiling anything or really giving anything away. And I don't recall too much of what they said surrounding Wonder Woman 84. Did they have anything that like stuck out to you in that discussion?
no, mostly because I only caught literally the tail end of it until the trailer started.
Mm.
Because I was having issues getting my stream to, get going, and I was worried that I don't know, maybe with my internet, something was going on with my internet, or something was going on with their server. Because I kept refreshing the page like a bunch of times, but it finally started working for me, and that's around the time like they just got finished talking and then showed the trailer. So like I
Mm.
barely saw any of the actual panel.
Okay.
Um, but as far as our next panel goes, um, that would be the panel for Warner Brothers Montreal announcement, which is, of course, we know Gotham Knights.
Heck
Now,
yeah.
initially, I was like, me, I'm not. I mean, I don't hate the Bat Family, but I often go back and forth on them, mostly because a lot of Batman stories can't decide whether or not they're more comfortable with Batman as a solo act or entertaining him recruiting a bunch of minors to fight crime and dealing with the ambiguity of that and the moral, like specifically the moral ambiguity of that. Um, and in particular with the Arkham series, I love those games, but seeing that they did this as a choice, um, I wish I wish the Bat Family was more important to the story of the Arkham trilogy than they are, because that would make this feel a lot more. It would make this feel a lot more, not necessarily justified, but like it would definitely have me more invested as a player
Well,
to
this game
continue on.
is
Wait,
let's
wait, 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 oh, wait. It would have me more invested in this as a continuation of those games, and then of course I found out it wasn't,
right.
which yeah. So I mean, you fix that problem, but I'm not inherently, and I also don't like the idea of Red Hood in that group after he is initially a Batman villain and tries to kill him. Um, like I don't like Jason Todd being a part of the Bat Family. But sidestepping that, it's it's interesting to go this route and give us a Batman that's already killed, and it sounded like Kevin Conroy. Like this is its own continuity, but it sounded like they still had Kevin Conroy as Bruce sending off that farewell message. So
I didn't quite hear that. It definitely sounded like a different guy to me.
I don't know. Maybe they got to look alike. I guess we'll never know until they finally release the voice cast.
Mm.
But yeah, like so knowing that it definitely, and then hearing the perspective, like they wanted it, they wanted to take away that sense of safety. Like Batman can just come in and fix everything, so he's just straight up dead. This isn't the Arkham universe. Like this, Batman's never coming back. You only have these characters, and they have to pick up the pieces. I'm not like I really like Nightwing. I like Nightwing and I like Damian. Batgirl is, she's okay. I like Barbara. Um, but these are not characters, at least from a story perspective, I'm like dying to sink my teeth into, but I will have to admit this game looks really cool. Really freaking cool. And um I guess that's really all I have to say until we know a little more about the story.
Okay, so what's next? Oh, well, actually, you know what? I am gonna just throw in a few more things, which is I I think it looks really nice. Something occurred to me that I've never really thought about, but I guess has always been true when we actually get into the gameplay section, which is I don't like seeing damage numbers during fights in video games. Like, I've never realized until just now that that's something that bothers me, but it is. Where I was really vibing with this game, and that seemed like a thing where I was like getting really excited for it. And but then like as soon as they start fighting Mr. Freeze and the damage numbers pop up, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. So
Well, something to keep in mind is it is just an alpha build. And even when you go back and look at the first gameplay footage that they show for Spidey PS4, um, like the interface and like the prompts and stuff, significantly different to the final product. And that's most games when they start promotion and the game is still being made. Um, so honestly, I kind of, well, to be honest, the Arkham games, they don't put a number up, I don't think, or if they do, it's really sporadic and you can't even make out the numbers, from what I remember. So, I mean, I feel like that's kind of a non-issue, or at least it will be by the time we actually get the game, but we'll see.
let's hope. And like just we don't have a ton to go on as far as how we're gonna handle the story and like whether we'll address some of the more problematic elements of, like you say, sort of like Batman recruiting children, and is that going to factor into our characterization at all and like the relationships here. I'm curious to see how all that stuff goes. I really, really hope that we don't do what I'm kind of expecting them to do, which is cop out and like reveal either later in the game or like halfway through the game that Bruce is in fact still alive, just like incapacitated and like unable to like do Batman action stuff somewhere. I have like the sneaking suspicion that that's gonna happen, and I really hope not.
Especially since they flat out told us he is dead, and the whole reason that we made him dead is because we wanted there to be this sense of tension, and like you can't just have the Deus Ex Machina of Batman come in and fix everything for these characters.
Yeah,
And I really like that idea, so I hope they stick to their guns on that.
yeah, agreed. So yeah, I
Um,
think that covers it for that. So what's next?
Next up is the Suicide Squad panel. James Gunn's Suicide Squad.
Yes, okay. So this is exactly the opposite of what I had with Wonder Woman 84. I was already excited by the prospect of this movie. Everything that we've seen here like skyrocketed up to like one of my most anticipated things. Like it looks so much fun, and just this is a like a common what's going to be a recurring theme here is the stuff that I'm really excited for is when we like sit the director down and just the way that they talk about it and how much heart and passion they have for it. Like as soon as we get that cast listing and James Gunn like flips the switch all the way on to like full enthusiasm and like it's hard not to get infected by that. And like, yes, that's how excited I am. And I'm so glad that the people working on this movie are just as excited. Like it looks so awesome.
Interestingly, you'll never guess what movie I actually went back to today.
Oh boy, did you watch Suicide Squad again?
Yeah, well, technically not again. I saw the extended cut, which is essentially the air cut, I guess. Yeah, still not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. But um, with this movie, I am also very much looking forward to this film. I like James Gunn, or I should say I at least like the two most recent movies that he's done, being the Guardians films. I have not seen any of his filmography before that, um, except Slither. I think I saw Slither, or at least I saw bits and pieces of it as a kid. Um, but yeah, like I really like his Guardians films, and it's interesting because um, my as I've said, my big problem with that first Suicide Squad movie, the one that Air directed, was that it felt inspired by Guardians, but like in all the wrong, like superficial ways, with all the super bright colors and throwing in a bunch of popular music and that kind of thing. Um, but it like we weren't. I mean, the characters were all over the place, and the story was pretty mediocre to say the least. So
It felt like the heart was missing. Ironically,
yeah,
in a movie about ripping a heart out of somebody.
and then I go to the behind the scenes, and it's like all the actors thought they were making a completely different movie. Like Margot Robbie and I think two other people talk about how this movie has heart, and I'm like, that's nowhere to be seen in either the theatrical or the extended cut that I forced myself to sit through.
Yeah, no. It's
But yeah,
unfortunate, but it's really just not present there and I feel so confident that it is here.
and I've seen a lot of the criticism that this cast is insanely large and bloated, and I'm like, guys, James Gunn actually understands the Suicide Squad as a concept, and I can guarantee you most of these characters will be dead. Most of
I
these
feel like
characters
I feel like only two characters are safe, and one of them is just like my weird, probably incorrect intuition. Like we know for sure that Harley Quinn is safe. Like that's just goes without
yeah,
saying.
you're not
And
touching Harley.
I've got this weird feeling, like in the back of my neck, that tells me that Polka Dot Man is going to get out of this movie alive.
We shall see. I really like that they not only are using King Shark, but he looks almost cute like he does in the Harley Quinn animated
Yeah,
show.
I was gonna say that's such an interesting choice to make him kind of endearing looking. And like, I wonder if
Um,
he's gonna like feel the same in the dialogue. He probably won't, but it'll be interesting to see what they do.
yeah, I don't imagine him talking exactly like he does in that show, but I mean, since he has such a similar appearance, you got to wonder if there was any influence there.
Yeah.
But if there was, that's really fun and cool that he did that.
Mm.
Um, Harley Quinn, she's wearing the suit straight out of Injustice 2, and I love it. She finally looks perfect to me. Like, just keep that
Yeah,
suit. I'm great.
they finally got it. Like, I didn't really like the costume at all that we had in the first Suicide Squad. The Emancipation of Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, was better in that it was like less trashy, but it also didn't really feel like what I'd want Harley Quinn to be wearing. This is it. This is perfect. I love this.
And I even like the dress that she has in other scenes.
Yes, that's also cool. And like,
Um,
it's just I like because what the Guardians movies, among other things, prove and what gives me so much confidence about Gunn is someone, I think it was Jack Saint on Twitter, was like, I knowing James Gunn makes me more confident than any other filmmaker that, like, when we do start killing people off, we only know Harley Quinn is going to survive because we don't have this feeling that you would with the lesser filmmaker of, like, okay, if they're an A-list actor and they're popular, then that's the one who's going to survive. We don't know that for sure because the way that Gunn handles character and just based on little things that he says about this cast, you already can tell he's a guy who gravitates towards the weirder characters and the ones who are not necessarily the ones that you would expect to be like carrying the piece. And so, like, I trust him to really, if not give everyone their due, because I'm sure some people are going to be like introduced and then killed off like that. But of the characters who actually get focus, I 100% trust him to just like balance it out perfectly, not let Harley Quinn like steal the movie from everyone else, not make it so that it's like two characters and everyone else is just off to the side. And like part of the reason why I think Polka Dot Man is at least going to be a big part if he doesn't like make it through the whole thing is the way that like when someone asks him which characters do you identify with, Gunn talks about how he identifies with Polka Dot Man the most and how he's like he has no idea what's going on, he's a complete mess. And like he talks about like Ratcatcher, who I'd never have thought of as like an important thing. It's like the only member of the squad who has any kind of grounding and is like a put together human being. And it's like I love the way that this guy thinks about these characters, and I can't wait to see like all of them get that treatment.
Yeah, I would say Harley Quinn is the only one we know for sure is safe. Not even just because of Margot Robbie, although those two things go hand in hand, but you're not killing Harley.
Yeah, no.
You're not killing arguably your most bankable actor and your most popular character. You're just not going to do that. Um, I mean, at least not under the right circumstances. Like, obviously, Endgame is the exception to the rule.
Yeah. Like if it's like a climax, like we're sending the character off in a fitting sort of ending thing, then fine. But as again, like the premise of Suicide Squad is just like these guys are expendable. Harley Quinn, from a like marketing production perspective, is not expendable, so she's excluded.
And I mean, it's interesting that Gunn said. I mean, in that cool behind the scenes featurette they showed, it says it's going to be a war movie, and they released this really cool kind of Top Gun, Apocalypse Now. Well, not Top Gun, more like Apocalypse Now or like Tropic Thunder kind of poster with
Mm,
I don't know if you saw it with like the exploding plane in the background and they're all running on the beach.
yeah, like the bits of the shooting that we get that's like on that beach.
Yeah, it looks really cool, and it looks a little bigger than I would have expect. Oh, I wouldn't necessarily say expected, just because there was no telling exactly what Gunn was going to do. Um, but I mean, it looks like he certainly has a better handle on that concept than Air ever did.
Yeah,
So I'm very much excited for that film. Definitely more excited after getting to see the footage and know a little more about it. So you ready to move on to our next panel?
yes.
That would be the oh so infamous, much lamented, like fans have begged for this ever since we got the theatrical release of the original Justice League, the Snyder Cut.
Oh gosh. Oh boy. Oh dear. You want to go first on this one?
Sure. Um, so I remember seeing Justice League in the theater for the first time. I was with my friend Weaver, and he, I didn't know this about him necessarily, but when I saw, that's also the first time I ever saw a movie with him in a theater, and I didn't know he was like significantly less critical than me. And the movie's over, and he turns to me, he's like, "That was awesome, right?" And I just I didn't have the heart to to tell him the truth. So I was just like, yeah, that was great. And like that movie's not like it's not as pretentious and up its own what as BVS, but
Mhm.
it still feels like a hollow attempt. And ironically and unfortunately, I think a lot of this is because of Whedon. It feels like a half-hearted attempt at just doing Avengers
Yeah.
without any of the solid character work or nuance or really any of that stuff. It just feels so hollow and superficial, and it feels like half the movie is sitting on a shelf somewhere and they didn't put the rest of it out. Um, but also like I just I was not, and I don't understand what even spurred this on, because as I've said numerous times, if the Ultimate Edition of BVS is any indication, this isn't going to suddenly make Justice League a legitimately great film. It's just not. Like, me and you sat through the Ultimate Edition recently. It's not significantly better than the theatrical cut. It's just not. Um, so I wasn't particularly hopeful for this. I mean, I like Watchmen. That's the only movie Zack Snyder's made that I think is legitimately good. Um, and he's got a real visual eye, and he is great at putting together great images and even sometimes solid action. Um, but he's just not a good storyteller, and I don't, I just don't see this being any better. Like, we have shots of um, Victor. I'm excited to, well, not excited, but I'm interested to see more of Cyborg fleshed out in this movie. I hate Ezra Miller's Flash with a burning passion. I don't like his weird, uber schizophrenic, nervous tick thing that he has going on with Barry Allen. I don't like his performance or his take whatsoever at all. I think it's ridiculous. Um, if I liked that take, I'd be interested in seeing more of his Flash fleshed out, but I am very much not. So that's a thing. Um,
I
and
will just say that there has been a sort of vibe that I've been getting from people who are more excited for this cut of the movie that seem to think that, like, all of the things that we find obnoxious about Miller's Flash is purely reshoot stuff or mostly reshoot stuff. I don't know how true that is based on what we've heard about scenes that they had already written and were filming, like back when BVS released, back when we
and
got that.
maybe this is just a him thing, but he's acting the exact same way when he cameos in the show, The Flash.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, like I hope that there's maybe some better material for him in this version of the movie. I'm not counting on it though, because like you say, Snyder's not a great storyteller, and his track record with characterizing these guys so far hasn't been the best.
It's been awful.
Yeah, but yeah, I just this the teaser itself. It looks like a Zack Snyder movie. And if you already know that you like Zack Snyder movies, then you're going to be excited for this one and you're probably going to like it. As someone who has firmly decided at this point, like you, I really only like one thing that he's done, and that was when he was doing a story that was not his own. I'm really just interested to see this as a cultural artifact at this point. I feel like this movie is in a unique position where, because of just why it's been made in the first place, the way that it's being distributed, it's an interesting sort of cultural artifact to look at. But as a movie, I don't expect it to be any good, and just I don't know. I don't want to read too much into like comments that Snyder himself made, like doing the answering the Q&A and stuff, and how I'm not going to read into those, but like he seems like an earnest guy, and I hope that there's at least some things in there that are interesting and that I can glom onto. You're right, definitely, when you call the theatrical cut hollow. I think that movie is bad and hollow in a kind of forgettable, harmless way. I've seen people like this one video by Nitpicks make a genuinely compelling case for it being the worst comic book movie of all time, specifically because of that hollowness. But I was content to let it sit as just a bad movie that we all forget about and move on from. The whole, and like you mentioned earlier, like not being sure how this happened. I think it happened because Zack Snyder has got like a weird sort of cult of personality of people who really sort of like absorb the attitude and like the philosophy that intentionally or not crops up in all of his movies, which is this constant sort of me against the world, I'm always right sort of mentality that I think led to this very stalwart movement to get this cut released. And just I still am in a position where I don't feel comfortable like sanctioning the kind of like non-stop social media harassment that fans did to get this movie made, and it's definitely
I wouldn't inherently paint it in such an aggressively negative light. I mean, there is something to be said for fighting for a thing that you love and want to see, and then it eventually happens, and you get to see it. Like Lucifer. I highly doubt you even watched that show, but that series was going to that series was set up to cancel. It's supposed to be canceled. Um, and then the fans eventually got Netflix to pick it up, and it's still going.
that's true. And like Infinity Train is in a sort of similar situation right now where that's at risk of not getting picked up for a fourth season. But I feel like there's a difference between that and like I get it. I get wanting to like knowing that like the thing that you want or the sort of like artistic vision that you either want to see continued or just see the full version of it, the potential to have it be available to you and wanting to take advantage of that. But again, like I would feel different if this was like a completed movie that they were literally just editing together and then putting out. But knowing that they're like refilming parts of it, there's parts of it that they didn't film initially. There's just a weird sort of, I guess the best word for it is entitlement that comes with this feeling of like, oh, you made a complete movie, and because I didn't like it or because I feel like it wasn't this person's vision, I'm just gonna hound you for years until you like remake the movie the way that I want it. And I get the sort of sentiment behind that, but I'm really wary about not indulging in that too much.
This was a very, very special case, and like I would do the same thing for another season of Spectacular Spider-Man in a heartbeat.
True, but
Um,
again, that's something that like you would have the goal there would just to be to get it started, to get it even begin having it made. That would be a more comparable situation would be like if Spectacular Spider-Man season 3 happened and halfway through they got like a new creative head and you didn't like the final product and they were like, no, do it again, but the way I want it this time. Yeah, and it's just like maybe my tune would be different. Obviously, I'm biased. My tune would probably be different if I liked what I saw in this teaser and I was excited for it and I thought it was going to be a good movie. But unfortunately, I do not.
well, regardless of that, I mean, I feel the same way in that I have absolutely no faith this movie will be good, but that doesn't mean I'm not genuinely happy, and excited for fans who genuinely do like Zack Snyder's movies for better or for worse, and yeah, I'm just happy for fans who do actually like those films,
Yeah,
but
if nothing else, the people who campaigned for this are the target audience, and I get the feeling they're going to be perfectly satisfied.
um, So next up, hold on. Let me pull the list back up. Briefly pulled out of it. Black Adam. Now this was this was like 5 years ago, maybe more.
It's
That
been
we
a
first
while.
got. Yeah, like I was still. I want to say I was either still. Maybe I want to say I. This was like maybe right before, right after I graduated high school. Um, yeah, it was definitely before I graduated high school that we found out The Rock was definitely going to be playing Black Adam at some point, whenever that would be. Um, and now we're finally. I mean, the movie hasn't even started production yet, or even pre-production. Well, actually, yeah, kind of pre-production. I mean, they have some concept art. Um, we have no word on a script or anything like that, but the wheels are in motion on finally getting this movie made, and obviously it's even tougher with the whole COVID situation. But um, it's The Rock. I'll see it. That's not a character. I don't even know that character super well outside of um, the Injustice games and Batman Brave and the Bold. It's the only two times I've ever seen him, I think, unless he's shown up in episodes of Justice League or Justice League Unlimited that I'm not remembering. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I don't
I'm
believe he's in there.
yeah, okay. I mostly know him as a straight up villain, so it'd be interesting to see them take the anti-hero route. I just hope it's. I mean, The Rock can make almost anything watchable, but I just hope it's not written on the level of Venom.
Yeah, and the way that he's talking about it and the way that everyone's I noticed that they seem to be being very careful with their words when they were discussing his character to not make him sound like he was a straight up hero. And like whenever one of them like between him and Noah Centineo who was there, whenever it seemed like they were getting close to saying that he was more of a straightforward, like good guy, they would kind of catch themselves and backtrack a little bit. I hope that's not all just talk to like appease fans of that character because he is generally more on the darker side of the spectrum. I hope that is reflected in the movie and that when it comes out, it's not just, The Rock being charismatic good guy with maybe some questionable, like just a hint of moral grayness, and that this doesn't feel like in retrospect like they were just trying to be very careful about how they talked about it. I'm a little wary that that might happen, but I'm gonna have faith that they don't do that yet.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Like we don't have any real footage. We just had The Rock kind of giving us the rundown of how he felt about the character and what he his hopes for the movie and that kind of thing, and answering
We
fan
get
questions. So
we get confirmation that the JSA are gonna be involved, so beyond Atom Smasher, like Dr. Fate's gonna show up. Uh, who's the other one? Whose name I'm forgetting?
that I'm really excited for.
Yes.
I don't
Like
think
I'm
we've
really
ever. That'll be our first time even seeing Dr. Fate in live action.
Yes. Well, on the big screen at least, I'm assuming that he's gonna show up in like season 2 of Stargirl or something.
That would be cool. There's a cool little Easter egg of him in Constantine. In the first episode of Constantine, Constantine has the Dr. Fate helmet in his like secret hideout for some reason.
Nice. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, like it's Dwayne Johnson. He's like got all of the charisma on the planet. He can sell me on pretty much anything. But beyond that, not too much to talk about with this one.
Yeah, the most the highest paid actor in Hollywood was going to be in it, so it, I think they've hedged their bets pretty well.
Yeah.
Our next slot is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
Okay, yeah. So I'm torn on this one because on the one hand, just as a neat, cool little cutscene teaser, I think it's really good. It does its job as a piece of marketing, and then I'm like, oh, this looks fun. It looks neat. I'm interested to see where this goes and perhaps play this. And like they talk about specifically with the setting, wanting Metropolis to sort of feel like a quote unquote fifth character, and that they're putting a lot of attention and time into making the setting interesting. Which, like, if that compares or even perhaps surpasses New York and Spidey PS4, then that will be amazing. And it looks like they really could do it with the little bit of Metropolis that we see over the course of this teaser. Like, it looks like the way that you would want Metropolis to look, like the city of the future as envisioned by the 1950s, only with a giant dystopian brainiac octopus ship rooted in the center. And it's like, that's a really cool idea. And if that's where we're going to be spending most of our game time, is in this like location, that's interesting. The character interactions look fun. I need to see some gameplay, and it'll probably be a while before we get any because this game is still 2 years out.
That's
So
true.
yeah, so like good teaser, but like I'm not fully gonna sign off until I see some gameplay, and I'm like, yes, please. And this is gonna be a little bit mean, but like I don't care for Tara Strong as Harley Quinn. I wish they'd have gone with a different voice. I know that she's been the de facto like voice for Harley Quinn when it's in animated stuff and video games for a while now. She
Yeah.
still has not grown on me. Like I swing wildly from thinking that her Harley Quinn voice is pretty okay to thinking that it's like nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, it's really unfortunate, but I still have that.
Um, I don't really have that. I guess I've just gotten more used to it than you. And now that I think about it, I've probably played the Arkham Knight games a lot more than you, if you even played them at all. Have you played those games?
I don't own them, but I have a friend who does, so I've played them a couple of times. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess I've just gotten more used to it. Um, it is. Uh, she has that voice that's kind of almost intentionally supposed to annoy you, so you're just as annoyed as the characters around her, I guess. Um, that's not. I mean, I if I had a definitive Harley voice, it would not like when I go back and read Suicide Squad in the comics, I don't hear her voice. And I more hear Arlen. Is it Arlene Sorkin that voices her in animated series?
Yeah.
Yeah, I more hear her. And that's obviously that's not you know the only like valid interpretation. There's plenty of voice actors that have done great work on great characters, but hers I would say it's probably my least favorite out of all the ones we've had so far. But I don't hate her, dislike her. Um, since this, at least as far as we know, doesn't take place in the Injustice universe. Yeah, I mean, it would make, from what I remember from playing the campaign from Injustice 2, it would make sense. Because Brainiac is a pretty big heavy in that, and he's like the villain of that game. Um, it would make sense for this to be kind of a sequel to that. Um, I
Well, this game we talked about how Gotham Knights, we were believed to hear wasn't in the Arkhamverse. Ironically, this game is in the Arkhamverse.
and that's kind of bizarre, just because, like I said, Injustice has kind of already done the big fight Brainiac thing. Um,
Yeah, and also because Deadshot is white in the Arkham games, to my knowledge.
I don't know if we ever see him without the mask, but yeah, traditionally he is, a white character, and they just changed his race out of nowhere. That's kind of weird. So yeah, this game is kind of a weird quagmire, but if the story's there, and the gameplay's really fun, then I'll be all for it and I'll play it. Um, like I said, I prefer like most of the. I mean, they handled some big-ish stuff, but for the most part, Suicide Squad stories, from what I've read, are a lot more low key than having to fight the Justice League. At the same time, there is something that I really, really like about that because we're about to see in season 2 of The Boys, um, a group of humans having to go toe to toe with Justice League level powered villains. And they don't even have any powers. None of them have any powers except for Kimiko. So there's something that I like about finding some sort of way to go up against seemingly impossible odds for a game. I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although you do have to wonder,
how does that group of people even come close to killing Superman without getting their hands on some kryptonite? And even then, how do they do that?
Yeah. And like you've got to, there are people I know who are like more apprehensive about this in the sense of they're not necessarily looking forward to a game or like a story where it's like, oh, you kill Wonder Woman and then Harley Quinn makes a joke and then that's the game. And I can understand having that apprehension where it's like either this game cops out and the Justice League are going to be fine by the end, or you really are going to like systematically kill them the way that they're making it sound so far. And is that necessarily what you want? Especially if it's in the Arkhamverse, and does that limit the potential for Batman to show up? What does that mean? But I don't know. I'm just
killing Batman, which another game has already done. So I wouldn't want them to do that. But I don't know.
I'm still in the cautiously optimistic camp about this game. I think this teaser is really good, but there's still a lot of things just conceptually that I'm not sold on and that I still need to be sold on.
Yeah, it's a bit, I mean it's bold, but it's a bit of a weird quagmire to make this your in-universe Arkham game. It would have made so much more sense to make the previous game that, Gotham Knights. But then as we said before, like those characters aren't as prominent in the Arkham games as they should be for us to spin them out and give them their own game when they weren't really important to Batman's story in the first place. So it's, I don't know, it's sticky, but overall I'm also cautiously optimistic about it.
Let's briefly go through just like little things that aren't even like major announcements, and that I have like a whole thing here, stuff just labeled stuff that I don't have much to say about, but I think is just nice. So I'm just going to go through that quickly, and then we'll finish off best for last with Batman. The first of which is when they got Neil Gaiman on to talk about Sandman. That's one of those things where it's like, I'm not super invested in Sandman. The little of it that I've read, I've really loved. But they're doing the audio version, and
I'm getting that, by the way.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to have that for when I go out to see.
Oh, that's awesome. And you can tell me about it and how good you think it is. But it's like James Gunn, and like we'll get to in a minute with Matt Reeves. Neil Gaiman is like one of those guys where even if I'm not 100% invested, he's just got such a charisma about him, and you can tell how much he cares about these characters and about story and about like all of the things that telling the story and like continuing to interact with this property lets him do. And it's really just neat to listen to that guy. And that brief segment that they had called Bawse, I thought was nice, even though Lindsay Ellis has kind of ruined the term boss for me as a female empowerment thing. I still just appreciate like having all of these women of color, just giving them a platform to like speak to their experiences and speaking about like roles that they're playing and like stuff that they're working on, and that's really a big thing that I really appreciated about this, is that it was a lot of great cool announcements for movies and TV and stuff, but it was also a healthy balance of just straight up comic book stuff and people in other parts of the industry, and it had a really wholesome like earnest vibe the whole way through, and stuff like that really contributed to it. It just felt like a good time and not just sort of like giving out news about movies and TV and stuff. It felt really warm and nice. Some of that went on a little too long, like when they got the Wonder Woman 84 cast back to like do that extended game. It's like, I appreciate the sentiment, but this is dragging. but for most of it, it's like I like that they did this. I like that they like took out some time to talk about stuff that's going on during the pandemic. I like animated Bruce and Terry basically doing an MST3K on Adam West Batman, and like all of the Batmen coming together to talk about how like Batman's mask would be useless during the pandemic. And Terry's like, my
Yeah.
mask is the only one that would actually protect me from the pandemic.
That's funny. Yeah. I also really like now that we're bringing this up, I also really like the little Harley Quinn bit. Although I was
Yes.
kind of disappointed we didn't straight up like this would have been the place to do it if you had any inkling you were going to be able to continue with a third season. This would have been the place to announce it. And we didn't
Yeah.
get that announcement, which has me kind of worried. Kind of has me worried, I'm not going to lie. But
It has me a little worried, but not too much, just because season 2 ended a little while ago, but not like so long ago that I'd be thinking, like, well, obviously, why haven't they confirmed a season 3 yet? I think they're still in the process of talking about it. I'd still lean more toward the fact that they like did this at all means that they're likely to do it.
yeah, you're probably right about that. But that was really funny having Kaylee Cuoco answer questions in character as Harley.
Who is a Harley Quinn voice actress that I really like. Just let her be Harley and everything. And speaking of voice actors and like to transition us back to Batman, the last one of these that I really have is I thought it was really neat how they gave like a couple of minutes to all of the international dub actors who've done like Batman voices and stuff. And it would have been neat to see that with a couple of other characters, but obviously, like, Batman is the golden child, and he's the one that we're hyping around the most. And like, I appreciate it just to the extent that we did it. The whole thing of just getting like the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Italian and the German and the Hindi dub actors for Batman and having them sit down and talk about doing the character a bit and like playing voice clips of them against the other characters still voiced in English, which I thought was an interesting choice. And I found that really neat. And it's just another one of those things of like, they could have gotten away with not doing that, but it shows a real level of appreciation and, for lack of a better word, like wholesomeness that
Yeah,
this
for
whole
fans
thing,
and creators all around the world.
yeah, that this whole thing had, and like this whole fandom had that vibe, and it's really part of like what carried it, even through the announcements that I wasn't digging so much, or like the stuff that I was less interested in, less hyped about going in. There's just such an unescapable enthusiasm to this whole thing that really made that 7-8 hours fly by, and I really want to give it credit for that. But yeah, now let's end with the big boy, which is, of course, the claymation DC World's Funnest shorts from 7 years ago that they played for some reason. No, I mean the Batman. We got the Batman teaser. Matt Reeves came on to talk about it. Robert Pattinson seemingly got woken up from a nap. He seemed like somebody tranked him, and he was like not the most awake. But that aside, 100% hype. I can't believe this is so cool. You go first.
Well, as I've said ever since this guy was cast, he's gonna
Oh,
do
wait,
great.
hold on. You might want to move closer again.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Well, as I've said ever since the day this guy was first cast, he's gonna do a great job. He's gonna do a great job, and all the naysayers will, finally shut up once the movie comes out. Or hopefully anyway. Uh, Matt Reeves, great talented filmmaker. My favorite film that he's done is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I rewatched that just the other day, just to refamiliarize myself with that film because it's a really strong movie and I like it a lot. And that, and I mean, Less So Cloverfield, I like that movie too. It's not as good as Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but um, those two movies are why I had absolutely no hesitation or doubts when he took over this project. And 20% from his mouth, 20%, only 20% of this movie's even been shot. and they put together 2.5 minutes of footage, like a full teaser trailer, and it looks incredible. I really like the suit. I like how dirty and lived in this Gotham looks. This Gotham looks like a straight up comic book Gotham. This doesn't have the, and not to rag on Nolan, it's just, Nolan had a different thing. He moved away from the more comic book feel and just did real world. This feels like gritty comic book Gotham. I could see this movie being rated R. We finally, well, not finally, because why am I blanking on his name? Jim Carrey. Yeah, Jim Carrey did Riddler a long time ago, and we're finally doing Riddler again. And we don't even get a look at Riddler himself in this trailer, I don't think. But he already feels there's already a menace and like a mature theme to this movie that just obviously wasn't present in that iteration. I like everything I saw. The only thing I'm not in love with is Catwoman's suit. If that's her final suit, obviously, Batman's not too far into his career, and presumably neither is she. But I do hope she gets a more slightly somewhat traditional Catwoman costume. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's a minor little gripe.
I don't think
but, like,
I don't think that's bound to be her last suit because, like you said, they'd only shot what Matt Reeves specifically said was like 25 to 30% of the movie. I think, and like just based on what we can tell from the story and like in this teaser, I think this is almost, if not completely, entirely all first act stuff that we're getting in this teaser. And he talks about it being kind of an origin story for Riddler, Catwoman, and Penguin. So I fully expect that Catwoman is going to be more her fully formed self by the end of the movie.
So I have no doubts this movie's going to be great. If
Yeah.
it is, I hope we get continuations. I hope we get a sequel to it. Maybe depending on where the story goes, maybe we don't need another like trilogy. We'll see what they do with the story, but since we're starting him out early, why not do a new trilogy?
Yeah, and
I
we didn't talk about the return of Batfleck, which is a piece of news that came out before Fandome like a couple of days ago. And I'm happy for Ben Affleck, and he seems like he's doing well, and I'm glad that he's going to get the chance to, hopefully, between the Snyder Cut and Flash, get to give more of a worthy performance as that character, and like really get to say goodbye to that character on better terms. But the big thing that I felt kind of dragging the Batfleck news down by some people was this idea that it kind of lessens the feeling of Robert Pattinson as now the Batman, like the guy who's potentially going to be carrying that mantle forward. And so I hope you're right, and that this movie comes out and it's like it's good for one, and it's successful, and that like people like Pattinson's take on the character, and he gets to like continue to be that guy for a while.
I have no doubts in my mind about that. Especially because like Ben Affleck's coming back for a supporting role in somebody else's movie. He's not getting his own movie again. What I will say though is I like that they're even entertaining that. Because Warner Brothers from not even maybe about a decade ago, a decade or so ago, more or less, I could never have seen them ever allowing that to happen, letting two different Batman to exist on screen at the exact same time. They were so afraid of that. That's why Batman was never allowed in the Smallville show.
And like you just reminded me that we didn't even talk about the Flash, and like I know that neither of us are excited about Miller, but I do like what we saw, that new costume, and how it looks leagues better than the Justice League costume. And something that I was not expecting, which is when Michael Keaton was announced to return as one of the Batmen who's like in this movie now, we all expected him to basically be doing old Bruce Wayne, similar to what like we get of him in Batman Beyond. The concept art that we get for the Flash is the Flash in a new costume and what looks like a fairly like in his prime Batman in the 89 suit. And someone suggested, oh, are they just gonna de-age Michael Keaton and like let him be relatively young Batman like in action? And like that never occurred to me. I'm excited by that prospect.
I'm not, just because like I love Michael Keaton as an actor. I've never been in love with either of those two Batman movies he was in. And that has less to do with him and more just to do with the quality of those movies. Like everyone loves those movies, but I don't think they hold up really at all. I mean, they're fine. Like they're not bad, awful movies. Um, but they don't really do anything for me outside of just pure atmosphere.
Yeah. Like I don't love either of those movies either. I like a lot of 89 on sort of like a style level, and I really don't care for Returns at all. But like something about the prospect of seeing that take on the character sort of like recreated in that way in like an upcoming movie as opposed to Michael Keaton just playing an old guy and we call him Bruce Wayne, like that still really excites me.
And if we're gonna, I mean, I at least like that the director that they have behind it. I don't know if he's also writing it, but I really like Andy Muschietti. I like what he did with um the two
Both
It
of
movies.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how effective the horror is, that's gonna vary just depending on who you are as a person. And even like they kind of vary for me on how effective the horror is. I definitely don't think the horror aspect is as effective in the second movie, but the character stuff is still really strong. So, um, if nothing else, I'm more than behind him doing it. I still think Miller is woefully miscast, but we'll see. I mean,
At
I'll
least his suit doesn't look like a butt anymore.
I mean, yeah, at least the suit's better. That's about it. But back to Pattinson. I really like what we were given with that teaser. I'm wondering, because the date that they put, it was like zeros and some question marks, but there was still a one at the end, implying that it's still supposed to come out sometime next year. Um, I don't know how they're gonna pull that off, given the current situation that we're in. Especially if the movie has to do any more significant shooting here in the States, and the U.S. just can't
Yeah.
seem to get their you know what together with keeping people under control and following the rules. Um, so I don't
Pattinson
know.
makes it sound like they're like getting ready to start shooting again, like now, which good luck to them with that if that's the way that they choose to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Honestly, I'm kind of it sucks, like, because um they're halfway through. I was watching interviews with Eric Kripke, who is the showrunner for The Boys. They're on episode 6 of season 3 in terms of writing, and he said they're, as far as preparations go, we'll see, but we're looking to start filming sometime next year. But that all depends on COVID.
Yeah.
So
I think best
eh,
case scenario is we get it late 2021. And that's like a best case. But that said, like again, like I just want to speak to Reeves. Now he has the same thing that Neil Gaiman has and the same thing that James Gunn has, where like the few negative opinions I do see about this teaser are like what you would expect from the people who didn't necessarily want a Batman movie to be so grim and self serious, and this movie definitely looks like that. A good way to describe it is someone said it looks like Batman Begins crossed with Zodiac. And so, like, if that's not something that you've wanted from a Batman movie, if you kind of miss like the days when a Batman movie could be a little bit more lighthearted and fun, I understand that, and like I feel that, I do empathize with that. But just the way that Matt Reeves so clearly like cares about this story and like it's really paying attention, like he has interesting things that he wants to say, and it seems like he's putting his heart and soul into this, I can't help but be excited. Like the tone and the presentation at that point is kind of immaterial to me because it seems like this guy really wants to tell this story and he's got stuff that he wants to say with these characters. And like we're doing, the one reservation that I have is that, and this is kind of beyond his uh beyond Matt Reeves, and like the movie was written a while ago, but he makes it sound like the whole Gotham police corruption is going to be a big part of it, and like we're going to explore sort of like the Telltale Games did, like maybe the Waynes were part of the like complicit in Gotham's corruption idea, and I'm interested in that. But on the police corruption angle, I just hope that when this movie comes out, its take on like police corruption doesn't come off as pre 2020, for lack of a better term.
Pre 2020.
In terms of like the way that we are currently in real life talking about corrupt policing and like how that's really taken off this year more so than ever.
Well, I mean, corrupt police have always been a part of Batman stories, and like that's very specific to like police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement and all that crap. And we don't need to get into that. And I don't think
Yeah,
the movie
no.
is going to even remotely try to touch that stuff.
Yeah, I just hope that whatever
If
they do
anything,
with it,
that'll
it
be
doesn't come off as in poor taste.
okay. I mean, I don't see Matt Reeves just having a cop randomly beat up a person of color for no reason, but um I don't know. I feel like that'll be a non-issue, and if anything, that'll be people projecting onto the movie.
No, I just mean like just because this is probably the only chance I'm going to get to talk about it. My big reservation is I hope that we don't like take the movie to a place where you're meant to sympathize with the corruption, or like not with the corruption but like with the corrupt police like individuals. I could see that becoming like problematic if the movie comes out and it's like we have characters in there who are like participating in this corrupt policing and then the movie ultimately tries to make you side with them. I worry a little bit that we might do something like that.
What gives you that impression just based off the 2.5 minutes we saw?
There's something specific, and it's in reference to a comic, I think, that Reeves is talking about, and like a specific
Batman Year One? Yeah, it's told
movie.
through it's largely told through the perspective of cops.
Okay, so that might be it, and like how sort of like the ultimate conflict comes down to a fight for their soul, and it's like it comes with that sort of baggage of, okay, is are the corrupt officers, like, is redeeming them something that we should care about? Is that something that we should want to happen? And again, like it's not something that I think is gonna be like this movie's gonna come out and like people are gonna like really complain about it or like ride in the streets. I kind of have the thing with it that there was with Joker, where the discussion around that movie ultimately like ballooned way out of control and people were like, violence, when really it's not even about that. It's just about unfortunate subtext. And like whether or not that detracts ultimately from the movie is going to be a person by person thing, but just kind of a way subtler, like, oh, this is an unfortunate part of this story that's here and I wish it wasn't, kind of thing. Like that's the worst case scenario, I think. Is like I think at worst it's just going to be kind of a problematic bit of subtext to think about in this otherwise really good movie, but I'm bracing myself for that to happen.
Well, I mean, I don't know. For me, it's not really because all the freaking political. I mean, whenever I watch a movie, as often as I can, I put myself in the headspace of the uh, the creators when they made it, and also in the movie itself. I know that when Matt Reeves wrote this script, we were not in the current climate that we are in today.
Yeah.
So whatever obnoxious, pretentious complaints anyone will want to make about police brutality in regards to this movie are ill-founded to begin with. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like by talking about it this long, I've already made too big of a deal out of it. It's just like a stray thought that occurred to me is like, I foresee this becoming part of like a discourse about this movie once it's released. Not to the extent that, like, again, I hope not like Joker, because that was something that I found just stupid and that people wouldn't shut up about, even though that wasn't initially what anyone was even talking about, and like the media just took it way too far. But I don't know. I'm preparing myself to have those kind of discussions. But that aside, like, I've got nothing but excitement for this movie. And there was one other note here that I had. We do see briefly, like a very, very brief look at Paul Dano. I'm assuming it's Paul Dano because we don't see his face. He's in like full costume as the Riddler, like with the mask on and stuff. I'm looking forward to this take on him. I don't know, like, we don't see him on screen. We just hear his voiceover. I'm really interested in a more serious, sort of darker Riddler that's not like totally humorless, but still, you know, the polar opposite of Jim Carrey, like going nuts. And like, speaking of the violence, we see briefly like Batman like just beating the tar out of one of these guys, and it is very reminiscent of BVS and like how he would just wail on people and go overboard in that movie. And I think it speaks volumes about how much Reeves is able to sell me on this and how much confidence I have in him as a storyteller. That like he talks about this being like Bruce in year two. He's not having any of the effect that he wants to have yet, is the wording he uses. And like he's not the fully formed Batman that we would want him to be, and like that guy who will give Gotham hope instead of fear. And so like initially I could see being apprehensive about like Batman just being so violent on like this criminal and like going overboard with it. I trust that Matt Reeves has an idea for that, and that this movie is going to handle it more smartly and more maturely than BVS did, where they just kind of gestured at the idea that this is a like broken Bruce Wayne who shouldn't be doing these things and is maybe scary in a bad way. I trust this movie to actually go places with that, and that by itself speaks volumes about Matt Reeves.
Yeah, outside of the trailer, just listening to Matt Reeves talk about his take on the character, and also just Robert Pattinson's portrayal, he has a solid image of his rendition in his mind, and like what drives him, and how he's still Batman, but it's just a different interpretation that we've seen before. He's just bringing something significantly new to the table, and that's really refreshing and exciting, because with Snyder it was, what if Batman was older and more world weary and angrier, and it's just,
what if we traumatized him even more?
I wouldn't even say we do that, because he still has, like, but what really makes him all the more traumatized aside from the death, because that's present in every incarnation of his parents, like what makes
Well,
him
what
any
we
more
were
traumatized
trying to
than,
do in BVS poorly is like it's the death of Robin plus what happened in Metropolis, and that makes him
we
worse.
never even know in the context of the actual movie if that's Robin or not.
Yep.
That's just a really half-hearted, lazy Easter egg.
Yeah, like not to continue dumping on Zack Snyder, but I at least trust Matt Reeves to put all of his characterization in the movie.
And we didn't talk about just the aesthetics of it outside of Gotham. I really like that Matt Reeves has chosen to make this a Batman that, for all intents and purposes, I mean, we know Alfred's in this movie, but I'm pretty sure we didn't see him at all in the trailer. And Batman's still building all of his own stuff. Um, I think they cast a Lucius Fox, but he's not making any of Batman's tech yet. He's doing this on his own. He he modified and pimped out his own Batmobile. He's making his own gear, and it looks a lot more. This looks so much more raw and I hate to use this term. This term feels so obnoxious to use after Nolan's movies. Gritty. Like we use that term so much for
Yeah,
everything.
but I mean,
Um,
it's appropriate here. It definitely seems like what they're going for.
but yeah, it feels refreshing. Because like I love Nolan's first two movies, but this feels like a true to form, like comic book style Batman. Um, but also in a very unique way because we rarely see that. We rarely see Batman early days making all of his own tech and it still looks kind of dirty and like there's scratches and it's worn out. Like it's a very lived in world. I just think that's really cool.
Agreed.
But yeah, I'm surprised I wasn't expecting us to even go over an hour. Um, but yeah, we're both for the most part fairly excited with the majority of what DC Fandom had to put out. Obviously, the big stinker that neither of us are particularly excited for is the Snyder Cut. Out of painfully morbid curiosity, I will force myself to sit through that. Um, but yeah, I'm genuinely pretty like I have my apprehensions about both Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, but I'm still very interested to see more of those games and probably eventually get them if it looks like the stories are going to be solid and the gameplay is going to be fun. So it is weirdly a very interesting time to be a DC fan, and even more strangely, mm, you can speak to whether or not you agree with this. I think DC might just be in a better position than Marvel right now.
Well, that I think could be its own other whole podcast because I think that could be a lengthy discussion. I don't necessarily disagree. It's not a question I've actually given that much thought to, but it's very it's like it's that's something I could go on for a little while. But oop, but yeah, I'm pretty much looking forward to at least learning more about everything that we've seen here. The Snyder Cut I will participate in as a cultural event that doesn't really feel like I can skip now. But yeah, it feels like it would be weird if everyone else has seen that and I haven't. So, but beyond that, uh, Wonder Woman 84, I'm more reserved about than I was going in. But even that included, like Shazam, Justice League. We didn't talk too much about Aquaman 2 because they didn't give us much. But everything that they showcased today, I am at very least looking forward to seeing more and learning more about. And like I'll be paying attention to these projects now in a way that I wasn't before. So this fandom definitely did its job. And I can't wait to hear people call Ezra Miller's Flash Batboy Jr. because Batman made his suit and will cameo in his movie.
um, yeah, uh, this was fun. I'm glad we not only got to see all this cool stuff, but talk about it for a while.
And like I hope this isn't like a one-time thing. I hope that DC and Marvel and like maybe even non-comic like networks or studios or whatever adopt this sort of approach again because I think it was a slam dunk as far as like keeping my interest for a very long period of time comparatively, and just really having good vibes and putting like the franchise and all the properties in a pretty good place. So yeah, I hope we see more stuff like this, more fandoms by other people, please.
Especially because I don't remember exactly who said this, but I remember watching an interview with someone involved in the film industry and saying, "Yeah, we've really become accustomed. Like we've kind of quickly gotten used to working from home, and we've realized there are certain aspects to these things where we don't necessarily need to all be together." Um, but this pandemic has weirdly kind of made us realize there are things that we can find a way to do just as effectively from our own homes.
So yeah, thank you everybody for listening, and we will have like far more DC and non-DC related stuff to show you guys later on. But for now, we will talk to you again later. Bye bye.